Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Dimitri Johnson, and you're listening to MMALatestNews.com.
It's time to roll, baby.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to MMA Latest. We're here live for the UFC Fight Island 5 preview. I'm here with Quilter and Arian. Guys, we're back. We did Bellator earlier, not a phenomenal event. And we're here tonight. Marlon Moraes, Cory Sandhagen, Quilter. A Bantamweight main event, again for the second week in a row now, but this time for the men's. How are you feeling ahead of this one?
I'm absolutely buzzing. Yeah. This card is like, I think we were saying off air, is like you could, without looking at it, you could think, I could miss this card. And then you look at the card and you go through it one by one. It's like, no, you can't miss this card. And the main event is one you just cannot miss. It is absolutely amazing. I think it's going to be an absolute banger, proper fight of the night type of job.
Definitely. Arian, this main event, obviously Marlon Moraes, he thought Jose Aldo won that one on the scorecards, but not in the people's eyes. And the people thought he'd lost that one. Obviously, Aldo got the title fight against Petr Yan. But Marlon Moraes coming back tonight, do you think, one, he gets a win here? Obviously, we think Aljamain Sterling deserves the title, but Moraes is still number one contender. So a win here, does that put him straight back in the title fight against Petr Yan?
Yeah, it's difficult to gauge where this fight would leave him with a win, because arguably, like you said, he should have probably gotten the last title shot on paper at least. But obviously, Jose Aldo's performance gave that to him. And now Aljamain Sterling seems like he's the first in line. But with the UFC, you never really know until a fight is booked. So would it be that surprising if Moraes gets a win here that they would try and convince Aljo to go in and have a proper number one contender bout with Moraes in the near future, maybe back on Fight Island maybe by the end of the year if they go back in December, who knows? So it's an interesting one, and it's also a huge one for Sandhagen too, because coming off a loss, it's always interesting to see how you bounce back, and going straight into a fight against a monster like Moraes, a heavy hitter after losing like he did to Sterling. It's a huge test for him. So I think it's a very big fight in that division, most definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Obviously, we mentioned there Aljamain Sterling is expected to get a title shot, but the fact that the UFC and Dana White have been very hesitant to name him both the number one contender and the next in line for Petr Yan, do you think we almost like a bank heist, isn't it? Marlon Moraes comes in, wins tonight, and gets straight into that title shot, and the fans and the public are going, well, why aren't you giving that to Aljamain Sterling? The fact that we've got pretty much every title fight is booked at the moment, or at least knows where we're going with it. But the bantamweight division at the moment, with it being so stacked, they haven't given us that confirmation that Aljamain Sterling is next yet.
Just wait, they're not going to give it to Aljamain Sterling or Marlon Moraes. They're going to screw us all over like they did to Marlon Moraes last time. Jose Aldo gets a rematch or something ridiculous.
Frank Edgar's next.
Yeah, it's like they're going to just. I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to mess someone around regardless. If Moraes wins, they're going to mess someone around. If Sandhagen wins, I would then. If Aljo isn't next, there's something seriously wrong, or someone's losing their mind. But yeah, never know with the UFC, man.
Definitely. Have a quick look at the tape, of course. 5'11", a huge height advantage for Sandhagen. But is there anything else that you're looking outside the area and that is taking your fancy in terms of who dictates the fight tonight?
I think this one is one of those where especially the size advantage and the reach advantage isn't huge, and I think that's the biggest one. I wouldn't really look at the height too much because of how Moraes likes to fight. He likes to get really close and he likes to bang and he likes to utilize his power. So I would definitely not look at the reach and think that Sandhagen is going to have a huge advantage. I do think that it would be in his best interest if he tried to keep some sort of a distance away, especially after how he lost to Aljo, to maybe try, and even just in the first round, because this could go the distance, looking how tight that division is, to just kind of see what kind of mindset Moraes is coming into this fight. And is he going to try to rush him and try and knock him out early? Is he going to try pace it too? So I definitely would like to see Sandhagen use that reach to his advantage, but I don't think that in the grand scheme of things is going to matter that much because of Moraes' style and how close he usually gets up to his opponents, regardless of the size discrepancies and whatnot.
Definitely. Cool. Obviously, Marlon Moraes did, go up against Henry Cejudo for that vacant bantamweight title at the time. Obviously, he won that first round on paper, but he gassed out, didn't he? So do you think tonight that fight will better prepare him for 5 rounds, or are you expecting maybe he does gas out again and that brings Sandhagen to come in those later rounds?
It's a learning process. I think it was, could have been a bit of a shock last time. You're coming in this time, that your opponent's going to be looking at tape review and thinking, oh, in the latter rounds he might die. We're going to anticipate for that. So Moraes he'll have everything. I imagine he'll have everything covered. He's a true professional. So and he's everything down. He kind of has everything down to see. His striking's technically perfect. His grappling is phenomenal. So I can imagine his gas tank is going to be on point tonight as well. If it isn't, probably something that'll probably have to be addressed later on. But I can only imagine that he's going to come in here and be like a tank full of diesel, just non-stop.
The analogy there, but I think we look at his come up to that Henry Cejudo fight. Obviously, 3 first round finishes in a row, but he's almost become in those last 2 fights at least. He's just a bit of a slow starter. Jose Aldo, I believe, won that first round, then won the third round. If I remember correctly, Marlon Moraes came out in the second and did some good work. But is it one that he might just be one that is a bit low in confidence, perhaps? It's like, he thinks maybe he's going to get the job done in that first round and not maybe preparing for those later rounds if he's coming off the back of three first round wins.
You can't. I don't think you can. You can't go with that mindset. I don't think it's possible with a fight like this. Not at all. You're destined for failure, really.
Especially if you aspire to be a championship caliber fighter, you can't go in there and bank on winning in the first round, because as we see in most title fights, even the likes of John Jones, who was notorious for his finishes, it gets to a point where you just don't put those people away. The more contenders that come up, so I would hope that he's not coming into this one banking on the first round finish.
I don't think that sets you up well, does it, for a title fight against Petr Yan, knowing his volume and capacity to go over those 5 rounds. We saw that against Jose Aldo. He looked phenomenal against someone who has been in those championship rounds many times. But going to Cory Sandhagen, as you mentioned, Arian, lost to Aljamain Sterling. It wasn't one that took too much stock away from it. As one first round, Sterling took him down very quickly and got the job done, and phenomenally so. But the wins before that, Rothwell, Sancho, John Lineker, he did look good, and he's someone who's quickly risen through those bantamweight rankings.
Yeah, I think he had a nice gradual come up, like you would want to see from a young fighter. He wasn't pushed too quickly, but when you did put him into the Aljamain Sterling fight, which was the biggest fight of his career on name and just on experience and everything, he did end up losing. But yeah, like you said, I don't think it took that much stock away from him. And I think it just goes to show how highly the UFC rate him, that after suffering a loss in an arguable number 1 contender eliminator match, he goes right back in there with another monster like Marlon Moraes, who is right up there again, number 1 ranked in that division. So I do think that the UFC are kind of maybe testing him now to see just how good and how legit he really is. Because even if he goes and loses this one, there is not really a lot of shame in that one. But if he does go to put on another show his toughness and show that he's hanging in there, he still has time on his side in order to, cover up those mistakes or whatever, polish out his game and come back stronger. But it's a big test again for him to come off a first loss in over 3 years, and to come in right against Marlon Moraes. It's a huge one for him.
Definitely. Kurta, do you think maybe that Sterling fight, there's a lot of factors going to it, maybe stylistically it didn't favour him too much? We know what Sterling can do on the ground, but also the first one, he was fighting in front of no fans. I believe it was it wasn't on Fight Island, was it? It was still in the Apex, in the smaller cage. So tonight, bigger cage, new arena for him. Do you think that maybe comes into the factors for Cory Sandhagen more?
Didn't think the bigger cage, actually. Yeah, that is definitely going to come into. I imagine it will anyway, because when he's that big, and I was listening to Dan Hardy, and Dan Hardy's talking about his footwork. I had to go back and look at it then, and you can see that footwork is really good, and that he'll be able to utilize the bigger cage. As a result, he'll be able to use more space. He's more room to move, and that'll be better for him to keep his range and get his distance, and then pick his shots from there if he can do it. It's just a matter of keeping Marlon Moraes off him.
Yeah, definitely. I think to add to that, I think Marlon Moraes said it himself. He said Cory Sandhagen's almost an upgrade on Dominic Cruz. So that's some compliment, isn't it, Kurta?
Too right, it is. Yeah, because if you're being compared to Dominic Cruz and you're able to show as good a footwork as Dominic Cruz does, or even be compared to that, that's a serious compliment. He's a former champion for a reason, so maybe he's the future one. Or maybe Cory is.
100%. Maybe we'll have a quick look at the rankings. As you know, the bantamweight division is absolutely stacked. Petty at the top of that. We mentioned Moraes at number 1, Cory Sandhagen number 4. So a win tonight would push him up there against number 1. But obviously, that loss to Aljamain Sterling almost makes it hard for him to slot straight into that number 1 shot with a win, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't think a win puts him right back into number 1. But again, like I said a little bit earlier, that it just shows how highly the UFC rate him. That even after a loss, he gets a fight against an opponent that's higher than the guy that he just lost to. And it just kind of gives him a platform to, if he wins, he's right back in there. So even though he did suffer that first loss in a long time, he's going to be right back up that ladder. Maybe, I don't know, he's probably not going to leapfrog Sterling if he beats Moraes. But maybe he will swap places. Sterling will get bumped up and Moraes will take Sandhagen's spot. And Sandhagen will slot into that number 2 spot. So I think it's definitely, like we said, it's just a huge fight for both of them. But I think even more so for Sandhagen, because he can really make another statement here after suffering a loss in his last fight.
Yeah, cool. Obviously, you know, I was looking through Moraes' record. Obviously, he was supposed to be facing Petyan in Azerbaijan, I believe, before the title was vacated. So obviously, it feels like almost Moraes, this matchup was in favour for him because obviously Aljamain Sterling and Sandhagen was already scheduled. We had a couple of matches that already booked up, so it seems like it's more Moraes having a lack of opponent. Obviously, we saw Cody Garbrandt in there, was meant to be fighting for the flyweight title, is unable to do so. Do you expect maybe Garbrandt to come back into the bantamweight division, or once he returns, or do you expect him to still go for that flyweight title? And how would that lay out the picture and the landscape for you in that bantamweight division?
If Garbrandt, I think Garbrandt stays down. Realistically, I think he stays down, goes for gold. Like, you're in a tight position. Why go back up unless you're going to fight for another title? Being realistic, especially since he already had the 135-pound belt before, 125-pound one on top of that. You're just solidifying your legacy. For the actual, in terms of how the rankings could look after this fight, if Marlon Moraes wins, could most likely be a shoe-in for a title shot, and if Sandhagen wins, I think Aljamain gets it, and then Sandhagen just goes up to number 2 probably, and with Aljo going number 1. I'd be interested to see what would happen if Sandhagen loses, because Sandhagen loses, I think everyone below him he can beat, being realistic.
It would be interesting. Obviously, got the likes of Frank Edgar. Maybe put him in there with Dominic Cruz, and you see, is he the upgrade on Dominic Cruz at all? That would be such a good fight. 2 masterpieces with the footwork. Could you imagine that?
Oh man, I would lose it. I'd be so happy. It'd be like, people would be annoyed because it'd be like dancing, but then it'd be like dancing with like intense violence.
Hey, we've got to be careful with that. Don't put that fight on in the UK. We're not allowed arts back on at the moment. We're allowed sports, but not the arts. BBC might cancel us. Very much so, maybe. But yeah, that fight would be amazing. I think that's, we were talking about Bellator earlier. I had Nyman Gracie up against Ross Houston. So anyone who wants to give me the call for the matchmaking, I'll go either way. But Dominic Cruz versus Cory Sandhagen, should Sandhagen lose tonight, I think would be a very tasty matchup. But moving on to the co-main. Actually, let's get your predictions first. You said, I think off camera, that you are expecting just to go 5 rounds, Quarter.
Yeah, I expected 5 rounds. Don't it? Quite technical performance from Moraes, and then Sandhagen kind of picking the shots, trying to get the win some way, like from range, and finish it whenever he can. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to go to full 5. I'm 100% going to eat my words, because that usually happens when I say these things. But yeah, 5 rounds for me, and I'm going to lean in favour towards Moraes. I think I love watching him fight. His technical ability is just so good. It's perfect, his technique. So I think that'll pay off, and that will stand to him. I think he's going to win this.
Yeah, and Arian, we almost promised the fans that Jorgen De Castro and Carlos Felipe last week wouldn't be going to 3 rounds. We said it wouldn't be going outside 1 round. So we didn't cover ourselves in glory of that one. But tonight, are you going 5 rounds, or are you expecting it to be done much sooner than that one? An early night for one of these 2?
Yeah, I'm definitely not making any promises for the rest of the month anyway. But I think in terms of this one, in spite of all that we just said, I think it would be in Moraes' best interest to try and get that one done early. Because I think that coming off a loss, somebody like Sandhagen might take a little bit to get his feet back under him, feel it out, and maybe he will just start to get picked up and get going more and more in the later rounds. And also, we have to take into consideration Moraes' gas tank, which, even though you'd feel like he was working on it, it might still prove to be something that hinders him in the later rounds, especially with the bigger cage. And if Sandhagen can move very well. So I do think that's going to be interesting to see how they both come into it. But I also would lean towards Moraes. I think with this one, I think he will come in a little bit more aggressive, especially because of how hard done by he felt by the decision and then by not getting the title shot. So I do think that he's going to come in here and try to put on a show and maybe prove Dana White mostly wrong that he belongs at the top of that division. And I do think that he will win. I think it might be a stoppage, but I don't think it's going to be early. I think maybe the third round. That's what I'm going to say.
TKO or submission?
I say TKO.
See, I'm in agreement that it won't go to the 5. I think it's going to go to that third. But I think Sandhagen's going to get done. I think he's going to utilize his footwork and his longer reach and that height advantage that he has a bit too much. I don't think it'll be a one-sided fight, but I think Moraes probably takes the first round, but I think Sandhagen takes it in that second and third. And should it, as Kurt said, go to 5 rounds, I think we see a decision win for Sandhagen more likely, but I'm going with Sandhagen to get a TKO win in that third round. So we move on to the co-main, of course, Edson Barboza versus Makwan Amirkhani, the Masters of the Flying Knees. This one it's the perfect co-main event for this card, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm buzzing. This should be a war. I expect nothing but exciting striking in this one. Amirkhani's got amazing wrestling, which could be a bit of a threat, but Barboza's got that brown belt in jiu-jitsu from Ricardo Almeida, so that could also come into play if it goes to the ground. But I would expect and would hope for this one to take place in the feet. I think Amirkhani's gas tank is going to be fine. That Burgos fight didn't do him any justice, but I think it's actually going to be okay. Barboza then activity level might just be a little bit too much, and his power and those kicks, I think they're going to overwhelm Amirkhani in this one. So if I'm going to go with anything, I'm going to go Barboza for this.
Definitely Arian. Obviously, Edson Barboza made that move down to featherweight, which surprised many with how big he is frame-wise as a lightweight. But obviously, he lost to Danny again at a split decision. He thought at least he was on the wrong end of that split decision. What did you make of his featherweight debut?
I think he's looked very good. I think his weight translated nicely. I think he looked good, like physically in the fights, and I also think that he looked like he was controlling and he was landing some very heavy shots. So I do see how he could have felt hard done by was being on the wrong end of that decision. I thought that he probably edged that one as well. And now I think it's gotten to a point in this fight where he is coming off 3 losses in a row. Although obviously Barboza is somebody that fights tough opposition every single time. So I do think that he is in the position now that even if he does lose the 4th, maybe a little bit like Carlos Condit, I don't think he's going to be endangered immediately with maybe getting cut because of the opposition that he's been facing. But I do think he goes into a fight against somebody like Amirkhani, and he will be looking to kind of put on the show and bounce back and get back in the win column. And I think, like Quilter said, those unregistered weapons of leg kicks that he has, it's going to be... I just want to see how Amirkhani, if he does try to utilize his wrestling, how does he get close and doesn't get clobbered on his way in? Because Barboza throws those for fun, and like we said, he doesn't really care if he gets taken down because he is capable to get the fight back on his feet and defend himself from bottom. So I do think that's going to be interesting to see how he comes into this one, because he does need a win pretty badly.
Definitely. Quilter, obviously, as Arian mentioned there, 3 loss streak that he's on at the moment, but he's lost 5 of his last 6, that win coming against Dan Hooker. He's on a slippery slope, isn't he? And, another loss here could see him be cut from UFC. We've seen a lot of cuts this year already, but another loss for him wouldn't do him any favours and probably sees him maybe head off to somewhere like PFL next year or Bellator.
PFL needs to start getting active if he's going to sign there. If anyone's going to sign there, are the few that they've gotten recently. But Barbo, you can say that he's 1-5 in his last 6, but Barboza he's been phenomenal. 2 of them have been split decisions. That last one, I'm convinced he won. I had it for him. I was shocked he lost. And for context, that was the same card as Angela Hill lost to Claudia Gadelha. So if that doesn't say enough in terms of who was judging that night, there you go.
I wonder if it was the same judge that gave it the other, to Claudia Gadelha and Dan Ige. I wonder if it was the same judge that made that final decision.
Probably was. I need to look that up. Probably should have done that. Probably was. But regardless, it just shows judging was off that night, and 2 crazy decisions. I don't think a loss would do him much damage. Don't think he'd be caught or even at risk at it. But it's just not a good look, and I imagine he'd be frustrated from it.
Do you think the fact that he is coming off the back of 2 split decision losses is going to have some venom going in there into that cage tonight, isn't he? He's going to want to get it done inside the allotted time, so he can make sure that he doesn't leave it down to the judges' quarter.
Oh man, all I can think about is seeing him put on a performance like he did against Dan Hooker. Watch that fight again last night, and oh my god, he like that was just that was how to break someone physically and mentally, everything. That was just crazy. Hey, that performance is amazing. So I'm expecting to come out with that type of like hunger to finish a fight.
100%. And obviously to Amirkhani, Mr. Finland himself, he's coming off the back of that win against Danny Henry, Arian. He's faced some good opponents, obviously, before that lost to Shane Burgos. Would you say tonight is his toughest opponent yet, especially with the experience of Barboza?
Yeah, I think maybe Barboza's credentials might get downplayed a little bit because he's been losing. But like Quilty said, his last 2 fights were split decision losses. So I do think that, you know, in those, it's hard to look past that fighter and say that maybe he might be done or whatever. I do think that Barboza comes down into this division with title aspirations. And he will be, I think, fully motivated and ready to make a statement and get back in the win column and show why he did come down. Like, he didn't come down here to lose. So going back to Amirkhani, I do think that it's probably the biggest fight for him. And it's a huge test because, again, if you look at Barboza's record, like, you just disregard that, because if Amirkhani gets a win over an opponent of that stature, that's massive. That's where you kind of get that jump start, you know, that can make or break you. And that, I think, if he did get the win here, especially if it's convincing, but I think he doesn't even care. Even a decision here or a split decision, it's huge for your confidence and everything, and just for his stock in that division. So I do think that it's probably his biggest fight of his career, and it's going to be interesting to see how he approaches it in there, because, like we said, Barboza, off 3 wins, 3 losses, he's dangerous.
Definitely. And, you know, just looking at Amirkhani, his last 2 wins has come via anaconda choke. So you mentioned there his wrestling and taking Barboza down to the ground. Should Amirkhani get the fight to the ground, we know he's got the tools in the locker to get it finished, hasn't he, Quarter?
Oh yeah, he's more than capable of doing it. I said earlier, Barboza can defend. There's jiu-jitsu credentials for that brown belt under Ricardo Almeida, but Amirkhani, well proven on the ground, trained at SPG Ireland as well. So his grappling is certainly like no joke. Like, those guys, they're very, like, a lot of them are lethal on the ground. Sure, look at the guys he could be training with. He could be training with the likes of James Gallagher, who's phenomenal on the mat. We've seen him submit everyone. He's gone in, not everyone, but most people he's gone in with, he submits them. So he's training with a lot of great guys out there, and girls. So he's got great training partners to test him. So I can imagine he's more than ready to bring it to the ground and actually get a submission.
Definitely. Have a quick look at the tape, of course. Anything that sticks out to you there, Quarter?
Not much. There's a small bit of reach which could play very well in Barboza's favour if he's trying to find his range and then get the leg kicks off from there, but not much really.
No, it's almost like a carbon copy of fighters, isn't it? Almost, in terms of their styles. I saw the highlight reels that UFC were putting out today. Both of them landing the flying knees. I wonder who throws or at least attempts that first one to, you know, you can imagine one of these two, once that bell goes, launching their flying knee at someone.
Masvidal spec.
Yeah, they're becoming more, you know, he's made it a little bit popular, hasn't he? Come out in that first round and just run at the opponent, see what happens. What's the worst?
Diego Sanchez.
Yeah, I think he might
terrible.
have the worst attempt potentially.
Oh.
But obviously we move on, of course. Ben Rothwell versus Marcin Tybura. Aaron, we know what you like with the Polish power. Marcin Tybura, he's coming in. Do you reckon he's going to get the job done against Ben Rothwell, who's very experienced here, 38-12 with courted record?
Yeah, it's a huge fight again, because like maybe with Barboza's record, some people might look at Ben Rothwell and think, oh, well, it's not the same Ben Rothwell, you know, as a few years ago. But by all means, it's a huge fight for Tybura, and it's high up on the main card as well. So it's a big one to make a statement in, and especially looking at Ben Rothwell's last few fights, he's actually looked pretty good. He's looked like maybe he's getting some second wind into his wings at the tail end of his career. And I do think that a win against somebody like him, and of, again, his stature and his experience, his history, does you no harm at all. And it's a great one for Tybura to turn the corner maybe in that heavyweight division and get some wind under his wings.
Definitely, obviously, Quarter, he welcomed OSP to the heavyweight division, and he got a good split decision win against him. Obviously, OSP didn't look too bad in that fight. I think he came alive a little bit in those later rounds, at least. But again, Rothwell got the win over him, and he faces a tough test in Marcin Tybura. Someone who's a lot closer to his weight. We know in that heavyweight division, you can be fighting someone who's 10, 20 pounds lighter than you on the night.
Heavyweight division is just crazy like that. And Rothwell, he's a big dude. He's a big dude, man. So he could come in at a crazy way as well and have a massive advantage. Rothwell, his last fight. Excuse me. His last fight looked good. He's kind of come on. He's two in a row now since. I didn't think he bounced back the way he did, especially after that USADA suspension. He had then 2 losses. I thought he was. The first one, not so much. The one against Arlovsky, I thought, okay, is he going to come back from this? And he's come back fairly well, so he's looked good. Tybura, he's been doing all right. He's had 2 wins, kept in the UFC. I'm actually quick, but I'm not sure how I see it going. I think, I'd have to go with Rothwell if I had to pick one, but I think it should be close. Maybe decision.
Yeah, I think that Stefan Struve fight had about 3 or 4 groin shot sheets and a couple of eye pokes apiece. I know watching that fight, I can remember Stefan Struve being in a lot of pain from I think he took 2 in a row because of the height differential of the two. Ben Rothwell, wasn't quite able to judge the angle and the range of his kicks. So it was a painful night for one of them, for both of them, I believe.
Man, those things hurt. I'd say those guys are in a lot of pain for a few days afterwards.
Yeah, I can imagine. We move on, of course. We'll stick to the heavyweight division, actually. Tom Aspinall made his debut at UFC Fight Island. He does return tonight up against Alain Bordeaux. I'm going to say it's the French. The French again coming in. Obviously, we saw Bellator Paris today having a huge success. Do you think the Frenchman could have any success tonight, Arian?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because obviously Aspinall came into the UFC with a lot of hype. Won that first fight smooth inside a minute, and then he's got in a debutant here. Obviously, France has been on the up. They're getting their events in, so I would expect that in the coming years there will be more and more French fighters coming in with a lot more promise. But this one, obviously, at heavyweight, anything can happen. Bordeaux comes into this one with a good record. He's 8-1. So obviously, I think even though I would say that a lot of people will be looking past him just based on Aspinall's credentials and experience at better promotions, and obviously how he started in the UFC, I do think that you have to go in there as a heavyweight and fancy yourself, and going in there, and I think somewhat derailing the hype train that Aspinall is definitely building on his way up in that division would be huge. And I think it's one of those fights where on your debut against somebody like that, you don't really have much to lose. So you just go in there, pressure off in Fight Island, and you see what you can do with that heavyweight power.
Yeah, Kurto, obviously we know Tom Aspinall and how he's come out. How impressed have you been with him once in his UFC debut? And of course, what are you expecting from him tonight again and against his opponent, Alan?
Watch Aspinall since he's been in Cage Warriors. Not got a chance to second name, no, Mitch.
Yeah, I heard Arian pronounce it. I've doubted myself now. He's not Alan.
I've watched Aspinall since Cage Warriors, and he's been phenomenal. He's looked fantastic. I've been a big fan of him ever since that his last Cage Warriors fight in Liverpool. But the guy, I can't see past him in this one. I think he's going to win it easy. No disrespect to his opponent, but his opponent hasn't fought high quality competition. He actually lost his last fight, but it was overturned to a disqualification because what was it? I think it was a pass test. Something happened. It was overturned, and he won by disqualification as a result. But he's also a light heavyweight, so he's on the smaller side of heavyweights. He's come into this with a lot of disadvantage when you look at this on paper, and you look at his last fight. So I can only imagine that Aspinall's going to come in and just run a clinic like we did last time. That is all I can think of coming for this one.
Definitely. Obviously, we know with the heavyweight division, it isn't the most stacked division. It's not, we've got some good guys coming up. We've got Cyril Garner coming up, of course. We've got some names that are on the come up. But how many wins do you reckon Aspinall is off from those, those top 10?
Probably about, I'd say if he wins here, that puts on 2-fight win streak. Say you need 4 fights and then top 10. Like, he's young, you know.
You don't want to bleed into him too quickly.
Yeah, like, he's got plenty of time. There's no point in just being like, yeah, okay, hey guys, 2 fights. Go on,
Here's Ngannou
with this. Yeah. Like, you gotta take care of talent as well, especially when it's as young and bright as Aspinall. Like, the guy has potential to be a champion. Paddy Power offer odds on him to be a champion by 2022 and saying that, so who knows?
But I do think, though, just to tag along to that, when you come off a win, obviously he won his first one, and now he's fighting somebody who's making his debut and who doesn't have a lot of high-level experience. So even if he does crush him again within a minute, you don't really want to throw him too deep, because you don't really know, even though you do know just how good he is and can be, you don't really want to rush him too fast. Like I think UFC maybe did with the likes of Taito Ivasa in the past. You don't really want to rush it too much. And like Quilter said, like, you want to take care of a fighter that, especially European MMA, rates very highly, and they think he could be future champion. You want to push him, but you want to push him at a gradual pace. And even though the top of that heavyweight division isn't that stacked, there is enough there in that top 15, the bottom of the top 15, to kind of feed to him and build him up and build a hype up gradually before he gets in and does get Ngannou, which inevitably probably will happen one day.
Does he get Ngannou before Ngannou gets a title shot? I think that's the real question.
Probably not. Probably could, actually, the way things are going, actually, but you never know in the sport, really, would you?
No, and it's cracking, isn't it? Obviously, you know, we're having fight cards that we might not usually see, but Tom Aspinall making his, you know, he's on the main card tonight. It's not like he's on the start of the prelims. You know, he's in the big leagues in terms of where he's stacked on the card.
Deservedly so. He's an exciting guy, heavyweight. Everyone loves heavyweights, and you know what everyone loves? Heavyweights that finish fights, and that's what Aspinall can do. He can knock guys out. He's got hands that are just top level for heavyweights. You don't see that every day. That guy has been in there with Tyson Fury sparring. He knows too well what top boxes are like, so he can hang. He's well and right to be in that main card.
Definitely. We move on to someone in the prelims. I think this one sticks out for me as a bit of fun. It's Impa Castaneda, who came through the Dana White Contender Series, and he won on the night. And we had Jacqueline Buckley, who made his debut against Kevin Holland as well, and he looked decent on the night. And it surprised me as well. I think he put a good showing of himself. And obviously, Castaneda came through, as I mentioned, Dana White Contender Series. It came in, won on the night, and made his debut 2 weeks later against Maki Pitolo. Got that decision win. And I think this is a little fun fight for us tonight.
Yeah, I think I like how he's undefeated. He came through the Contender Series, and he defeated a guy who was going into that fight as with a renowned as a little bit of a heavy hitter. He went into that one, he neutralized him. He got the win, unanimous decision. And also, it's the thing that he won on Contender Series, and straight away he was ready. He got that call, and he just wanted to fight. Like that just kind of, it's a little thing, but it makes those fighters stand out, and not only in Dana White's eyes, but in the fans' eyes. That especially if you come through the Contender Series and not a lot of people might know you, especially to the casual fan, you want to just get in there like Khamzat did. I'm sure not a lot of USA fans, especially those who are maybe more knew of him from the European scene, but he came over, he's fighting every week, and now everybody knows him. So I think this might be more of the same. You get in there and you win another fight in a very short span of time, and you're slowly but surely getting yourself right up to the business end.
Definitely. I think that for me is the fight to watch. But obviously we move back to the main card. Obviously Marcus Perez versus Dricus du Plessis. Is that the right pronunciation, Quilter?
I'm gonna go with du Plessis. Yeah, that's what I'd say. Arian with the accents, love it. Yeah, that is du Plessis is probably he's been robbed of so much hype. It's actually disgusting, to be honest with you, because this man has gone. He's won two titles in 2 different weight divisions. Excuse me, I'm falling over my words. 2 titles. He went to UFC and he had 2 titles, and then he went to KSW and won another title. KSW is no joke. UFC were trying to get talent from, well, they got talent in Gamera, but they're trying to take talent from KSW for years now. Du Plessis went over, he won. I know he lost the title, but still he had it at one point, and so it just shows that level he's at. He is a serious. He's 26 as well. The guy is so well rounded. he's the complete package for someone coming to the UFC, and he's a great sell if you're trying to go to South Africa in the future, or if you go to Africa in general. It's beyond me how this fight has actually just been overlooked and not been given as much hype as it deserves, because the guy is legit. Perez, obviously, no disrespect to him, he's an entertainer. That whole Joker thing, I absolutely love. His submission game is absolutely brilliant. He's got some good wins over Anthony Hernandez and Ian Heinzich. So that just shows, when you're being put in there with someone like Perez, that just shows how much they think of Dirk du Plessis. But he deserves more hype for me.
Yeah, we're getting told off in the comments. Apparently, Damien said it's the wrong pronunciation.
Oh, please, so, Damien, I'm so sorry.
We're both on the wrong side of this one.
I bet your mind was right.
Let us know, Damien. Let us know in the comments who's mastered the pronunciation here. We'll have a couple of language lessons over the next couple of weeks.
I feel bad because no one can ever say my name, so when I can't say names, I just feel really bad. Then I know the feeling. Same with It
took me about 12 months to get Cory's name right, so we don't have to feel bad. But yeah, Damien says
du Plessis. Thank you, Damien. Yes.
10 points. Give yourself a gold star. But I think we saw KSW on today, so we know it goes under the radar, doesn't it, a little bit. But we know, again, in Poland, how big KSW is. It's almost like the Cage Warriors in Poland as a region, isn't it?
Man, KSW is probably one of the biggest promotions in the world. Arian, I say you have a lot to say about KSW.
Yeah, I was going to say that arguably in a lot of debates and arguments, a lot of people do say that it might be the best organization in Europe, even though I do think that Cage Warriors would have a lot to say about that, and especially with the amount of talent that they pump out all the time. But KSW has come from really being unknown to being a very high level, and a lot of fighters like Kulta said, and now Gamrot is going to be very interesting to see how he transitions into the UFC, because he is 18-0 right now, so that's a huge scoop for that lightweight division. And yeah, I think there's a lot more talent waiting there right in the wings, and I think du Plessis is going to be another one that went under the radar, like Quilta said, in that promotion for a long time. And I think a lot of people are sleeping, but coming in here to fight a guy that is a little bit more seasoned in the UFC, obviously, it's an instant opportunity to go and make a name for yourself. And I think like it is with a lot of European promotions, people don't really believe the hype, and maybe rightly so, until you come over to the UFC and finally show it in front of all of the eyes, rather than maybe just the European eyes or the hardcore MMA fan eyes. So it is a test, but a lot of those fighters from Europe come in and pass those tests.
You're saying many eyes, but like KSW have held events in stadiums with nearly 50,000 people looking at it. So that says enough in terms of how much they can sell and how much people are watching them. So I'm pretty sure any hype about them is just completely real when they're able to do stuff like that. That is historic. And it's so underappreciated.
Well, we saw the reception that Jan Blachowicz got, didn't he, after bringing home the light heavyweight title. You don't get obviously we like Bisping as champion. We wouldn't have a whole nation almost coming together, be like standing outside Manchester Airport welcoming this guy home. So you know what Jan Blachowicz and the Polish fans think of MMA, and it's nice to see. So you almost get jealous. I think Ireland's replicated that pretty well with the stars that they had. You get jealous of how well the fans and the public back their fighters.
Yeah, I think it's also huge for somebody like Blachowicz. It's a huge credit to the Polish MMA scene, because he's been through the ringer. Like, he came through KSW through and through from the beginning. He was dominating there. He came over to the UFC, initially struggled, but it also just goes to show you that Polish toughness, in a way, if you want to say it, or the European toughness, if you want to generalize it a little bit more, because he was very close to being cut. Realistically, he could have been back a long time ago, but he turned it around. He got down to work, and now in the end, probably near the tail end of his career, he finally got that belt around his waist, and it just kind of shows that those hardcore MMA fans that have been there from the beginning, seeing that sport grow to what it is now, are just appreciative to see that one of their own has finally got the validation on the global scale with that belt.
Definitely, and obviously you'll know this a bit more, but where you mentioned it about the USA not almost translating the hype until they see it in the UFC, I guess it's a bit like NBA, isn't it, where you get a lot of Europeans coming over, but obviously the hardcore American audience are going, oh, you're not as good as the guys that we got in the NBA, until they come over and prove themselves and end up with a ring or two.
Yeah, and I think it's a very good comparison as well, because NBA is obviously based on athleticism, and then Europe is a little bit slower, more technical. And I think it's very similar with the fighters. You know, a lot of USA fighters fighters that are brought up in America are either wrestlers, very dynamic wrestlers, knockout artists, and then somebody like Blachowicz comes over, who is more calculated, carries that power, but just is a little bit slower in there. It feels like he's fighting at his own pace, but then in the end he is able to produce the goods. So I think it's a good contrast. That
was a beautiful comparison. I would have never thought of that. And Europeans going to the US going to the NBA, and Europeans going to the UFC. That is amazing. Yeah, that was good. I like that. I would have never thought of it in a million years.
This is the MMA Latest content.
This is the content I am here for. I did not know that. That's why I'm into it. I love that.
Definitely, the NBA Latest channel will be coming soon anyway. But Perez. But Perez is coming off 2 losses, albeit 1 in a grappling bout. So this is almost the perfect start for Dricus, isn't it? You know, he's coming in here with someone who's almost needing a win. You know, that could work in his favour more, because someone's almost a bit desperate to get that win back and get back, back to the winning ways.
If he gets desperate and leaves any holes open that Duplessis can take advantage of, well, he's probably in for a very tough night, because he's ranked number 1 middleweight in South Africa on Tapology for a reason, man.
Yeah,
the algorithm likes him for a reason. That's so. I think he's gonna pull off a win here.
100%. That would be fantastic to see. And we move on to the final main card. We've got Yusuf Zalal, the Moroccan Devil, up against Elia. I'm going to say Topuria, another Georgian. You know, the Georgians are coming through and absolutely dominating at the moment, aren't they, Cora?
Oh, I love this fight. This one fight of night written all over it. Say what you want about the rest, and this one's got it's fireworks all around. Amazing. Zalal, he looked absolutely phenomenal. He is UFC's ticket to Morocco, along with the Azatara brothers. Zalal is a straight killer. It's amazing to watch. He's so good, so exciting, fast paced, striking's just phenomenal. And now he's being put in there against another really, really exciting fighter in Ilia Topuria. Topuria is just like he's undefeated, 8-0 Georgian. He's representing Georgia. He's one to watch. I've been looking at Georgie on Twitter all week. Georgie's been saying some really, really good things, and I'm listening. That man hasn't been wrong many times yet, so I'm going to listen to him. And I have all hope that this one is going to be fight of the night.
Yeah, definitely. We must be getting steps closer to having our first UFC event in Africa, isn't it? You know, the amount of talent that's coming out from that continent. You know, Edra Adesanya, Kamaru Usman, and Ngannou. You know, Yusuf Zalal, of course. And it's almost a shame, isn't it? I wonder if we hadn't had this pandemic, we had fans and being allowed in audiences, and the ability to travel across continents. I wonder if we would have seen that this year, and hopefully the UFC had got it, penned in for next year.
I mean, yeah, the pull that they will have if they ever put a card on there, which does seem that it will happen sooner rather than later when things clear up, is huge, and especially if they get another champion in there in Ngannou, and then they have obviously Adesanya with the African roots and Usman. You can throw a 3-title fight card in there potentially next year, which is it's insane, but just credit to the talent that keeps getting pumped out of there, and there's more coming. So most definitely, it's an untapped resource for the UFC right now.
The amount of talent that's come from Africa that's currently in the UFC I think they'd have to have it'd have to be more than 12, 13 fights just to be able to get them all on it.
The caterers have to bring the trilogy over. There are three events in one night, or 3 events across a weekend.
Yeah,
be unreal. I'd watch.
A whole festival of fighting. Of course, you got Sadiq Youssef. You got in the featherweight division. Yeah, as you mentioned, the card you'd be able to build is phenomenal. But tonight we're focused on Yusuf Zalal. He's coming in on a 4-fight win streak. Of course, is it gonna be an easy ride for him, or is it gonna be one that we've seen what these Georgians are doing at the moment. They're coming across and they're putting on very good shows.
I mean, by all means, Topuria is coming in undefeated, and he's coming from a mix of one Cage Warriors fight in the last 2 in Brave. So I would definitely not be looking past them whatsoever, because even if a fighter maybe has experience at a lower level compared to Zalal, who's been in the UFC for a little bit, you don't want to lose that hope. And also we've seen just how good the talent coming out of a small country like Georgia is. So it's I can't say that I've seen them fight before, But based on record and just based on the hype, because, you know, hype builds all around Europe, not just from that country, but people are talking about him as a real talent. So I definitely would not be looking past him. And also just, again, linking back to the amount of talent that has been coming out of Georgia recently, it's another one that is getting the platform here to show really what he's made of against a very, very good opponent.
Definitely. We moved on from one Georgian to another. Giga Chikadze against Omar Moraes. I know I just butchered that. In my own head, I just doubted that one and replicated it in my own head. But, you know, another fight on the prelims tonight. Do you think it's a little bit lower in the card? Obviously, our good friend in the group chat said it's the best fight on the card tonight.
I completely could agree. Maybe the other one is probably it's my fight tonight, but this one, it's the best of the prelims. This one's unbelievable. Giga, I've watched Giga since the Glory Kickboxing days. I said it there the other day. Been watching him throughout college. I used to sit down some evenings. I used to turn on the laptop and we'd watch a load of Glory Kickboxing fights, and the amount of Giga fights that we've watched. I've seen all of them. He is top talent. And people look at his MMA record and say he's not fought the best of guys, but he's come into the UFC and he's looked good. And now he's got a serious tough test in terms of Moraes.
Definitely. You could say you turn Giga fights into gigabytes with all that data you've been watching. I'm sorry, that was too easy. That was too easy.
Oh, I'm leaving. I'm out. Jesus.
But Arian, Omar Moraes, what are you expecting from 10-0? You know, he's not gonna be no one to walk over, is he?
Yeah, another undefeated fighter, and I think in direct comparison, are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, another undefeated fighter on the card, and in direct comparison with Giga, he also has quite a few good wins. So they've all been able to put together some solid wins in the UFC, and now it's a test. It's a clash of styles, and it's going to be interesting to see which one comes out on top. Again, the strong Georgian kind of wave that's coming over against a guy who has a tremendous amount of potential, fighting against somebody who's very dangerous. Again, with that undefeated record, low on the card, but I think that's how you make your name. When you go start scrolling through the fight card, see the results, and see somebody this good getting a solid victory so low, it kind of makes you just make a mental note to see for the future.
I think a factor come into this for Moraes. He's coming down from lightweight, and he's a big guy. Like, if you look at Moraes, he's jacked. So the fact that I thought he would have been big enough to go up a weight class, never mind come down. So I can't imagine what those extra 10 pounds are like to cut for him. So that could play a massive factor, because you don't exactly know what he's like at this weight class. So that could be a massive factor, and he's a favorite. I'm looking at the odds here. He's the favorite to win this. And I would not be confident that he should be favourite either, especially when you take into consideration all the different variables involved. Of course, he looked good against Gabriel Benitez, but I'm not sure that it'll translate when you get down at featherweight.
You're seeing it a lot more now, isn't it? Obviously, the trend was you move up a division, but we're seeing a lot more fighters now move down the division. Do you think, obviously, with science and with how nutrition is going, do you think there's a lot more people going saying, if you've got these extra 10 pounds, your power might be able to transform and you might look even better?
It's stupid, to be honest. I don't think anyone should be cutting weight. Fight what you walk at, and actually fight like what you. There's not why can't you fighters just say, look, I know we're about to fight, but why are we going to bother sitting there the night before and cut a heap of weight and put our bodies through absolute hell? That's probably going to cause us long-term damage.
Yeah, when you're not walking in and fighting at that weight, are you? You're going to put those extra 10, 20 pounds that you cut in that night back on.
That dehydration is not good for your brain, not good for your body. And if you're doing that for years upon years upon years, that's not good for you. Like, it's such a shame that people are doing it. And now they're pushing themselves even more to cut an extra 10 pounds on top of that. The amount of discipline, the amount of planning that must go into that's tough. And it's a shame. That's all. That's really it. Like, it's just a shame that we're in that people are going down instead of going up. I wish they'd go up so they cut less weight.
I do think that a lot of people believe that maybe it's a shortcut or some sort of an advantage for them to get down and then obviously come in on fight night quite significantly heavier than maybe somebody who is a natural featherweight or just has a lesser weight cut. And I think especially with just how well, I think for the most part, we have, or the UFC coaching staffs and nutritionists have cracked down how to cut weight efficiently and maybe just not kill the fighters as much as they have in the future. You know, it's becoming more of an option for them, and maybe more of an attracting option, especially if, say, a lightweight division is ridiculously stacked. So you look at the featherweight division, that is still very good, very, very packed with talent, but maybe a bit less. You see more of an avenue there for yourself, and you get that kind of an itch to give it a go. But I do agree with Quilta, though, that I don't think that fighters should be cutting excessive amounts. They should just be fighting under weight, and I think that's how you kind of naturalize the divisions too, because you have the fighters at where they're supposed to be with no weight. Because, and I think that just ensures peak performance too, when you don't really have to just put yourself through that horror of a week to get all those pounds off. Yeah,
100%. I totally agree with that. And, I think it's a wrestling thing, isn't it? I think from what I've heard of Charles on, it's something that transcended from wrestling, the heavy weight cutting. But, because obviously we didn't see it as much in the UK. Obviously, with the growth of MMA, people have been doing it almost on their own back, which is almost even more dangerous and more detrimental to people's health. But it's almost like, obviously, I think ONE FC do it, don't they? They do the hydration tests, and I think they're doing it in a good way, where you're not cutting down so much weight and you're fighting more at your natural weight, perhaps.
Yeah, what they do, or what they come out and say is their how they run things. It seems to be working. I hope it's working. Fighters seem to be happy to get fighters. It doesn't look like there's anything. I think the best the UFC's done is taking away the IVs. But the one model, although it may not be perfect, it's a step in the right direction that probably all promotions start taking.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if a promotion comes out and goes, right, you have to fight at your natural weight. Although I guess it's almost hard for the organisation to gauge where someone's natural weight is.
It need a lot of money and a lot of resources.
Yeah. Yeah, and which after this year, I'd imagine they're very tough to come by for most. But obviously, with a look at the final fight of the night, this was Arian's pick, of course. Tracy Cortez versus Stephanie Edgar. That
should be on now.
Yeah, I think they're walking out any minute now. So give it a quick minute wrap up. Tracy Cortez, Arian 7-1. She's coming against a slightly unknown prospect in terms of the UFC audience, and Stephanie Edgar. What are you expecting from this fight tonight?
Yeah, so I have a soft spot for female wrestlers like Tatiana Suarez has shown. I think stylistically in the division below at strawweight, that I think she has the beating of pretty much everybody with just how big and how strong in the wrestling she is. Even though her striking might not look great, I think a lot of people have tipped her to become champion sooner or later. Well, we don't know now with the injury, but she did look like she was on that wave. And I do like Cortez at the flyweight division particularly, because she does seem bigger than most of that division. And although this fight is at bantamweight, I'm not sure why. I do think that her home is at flyweight. And I do really like that style, because it seemed that in her debut, once she took her opponent down, and she was very good and very persistent with shooting for those takedowns, there was really no way back for her. And it's a bit of a shame here that Bea Maletsky wasn't able to compete in this one, because that would have been a great test for both of them, because it's a bit of a stylistic contrast, and Maletsky is also a very big fighter for her weight class. So I think that would have been a very good gauge of where they're both at and who maybe has more hype behind them going forward. But I think this one is just, you get somebody put in front of you and you just have to beat them. But it's also, again, a very good platform for Edgar too, to come in here and try to maybe derail a little bit of a hype and secure herself a longer stay in the UFC.
Yeah. Definitely, we've seen it a lot. Fighters coming in, at Macy Barber, the Sean O'Malley's, who are coming in from the Contender Series now, which seems to be now the spot. If you want to get into the UFC, that's almost your path to go to now, Quilta.
Yeah, look, it's proven successful so far. We have Impa on this card. We have Tracy Cortez on this card. Both of them really highly touted prospects. With this card in particular, with this fight in particular, with Tracy coming into it, I do feel like that her home, as Arian said, is a flyweight. She's moving up to bantamweight for this fight, and her opponent has fought at featherweight quite a few times. So I imagine there's going to be a bit of a size discrepancy here, but it might not matter simply because of the talent that is, and it might actually mean that Tracy Cortez, what we were talking about, might not have to cut that much weight and might perform even better. We might just see that today.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see an injection of talent into that bantamweight division. Obviously, we know how stacked it is at the top. But again, you're probably looking at, as we mentioned before, you're looking at around the other divisions, strawweight and bantamweight, and especially featherweight. You're probably looking there if you're on either side of those weight classes going, if I go in here, it might be better for me in a career aspect.
100%. Yeah, if you look good in this, it's the way forward. It's the way forward, really, isn't it?
Oh yeah, especially go on, Arian.
I was just going to say that I think just linking back to Cortez fighting this one at bantamweight, I do like the flexibility that more fighters have these days, that you can go across multiple divisions and you kind of, I don't want to say pick and choose, because eventually you're going to have to sell for a division that you want to pursue a title in if you are that good, obviously. But I think it's good that you have that flexibility, that if you need, you can cut some weight. If you don't, you can have a probably easier weight camp in terms of that. You can focus more on polishing your skills instead of killing yourself during that fight week to shed off the extra pounds. So I do think that might work out for the benefit for some more fighters, even moving forward, coming up, that will see this as an opportunity to come into a promotion and maybe take time to fight at two divisions and see which one they feel better at going forward.
And I think no one's done that better than Khamzat Chimaev. But I'd say he's showing the way at 170, 185, and it looks like he's probably going to, even if he does choose 185 for a title shot, he's going to be bouncing up, and he's throwing out the light heavyweights out there as well.
Love to see it. Cortez. So are you saying that Cortez should go up to featherweight next? Yeah.
Hey, you know what? She's one win away from a title. With all due respect.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, true. We'll see how she gets on now in the next few minutes.
I think,
100%.
Since you mentioned Chimaev, I just want to say how insane it is that he can bounce between 15 pounds just so easily. And he says, yeah, if no welter wants to fight me, then give me somebody 15 pounds heavier. That's probably 200 pounds on fight night. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what his weight cut is, if he's walking around at 185, 186, and then cutting down to welterweight if he needs to, or if he's taking a middleweight fight, he can just step in there. Because obviously he's fought, 3 times this year, and was supposed to be fighting Damien Maia. He's looking at the likes of Wonderboy now, and even Darren Till today saying, if you're not going to have a fight, let me smash Jack Hermanson, and then we can step in the cage together.
Fight it. Go on, Aaron.
Oh, go ahead. I have a silly comment.
I was like, he'll yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that in the future. I think that'd be actually quite fun.
I just wanted to say that Mitch said he had 3 fights this week. He had 3 fights in one trip to Fight Island.
He said what?
No, I was just saying, Mitch was saying that Chimaev had 3 fights this year when the man had 3 fights in like 2 weekends in Fight Island.
Yeah, the man's
Even busy.
Crazy active, and he's going to have a 4th as well. He's looking at a December 19th date.
Yes. Is he headlining that card? I saw a couple of rumours that Dana White was going to fight a round fight.
I looked at an interview with him yesterday. It was an interview with Kimura in Sweden, with Daniel Schalander, and I hope I'm not saying that correct. And what he told Daniel was that he's just expected to be on that card. I didn't see anything about a main event in particular. It's just it seems to be rumours, but they seem to be quite valid rumours all the same.
I think if he gets to fight somebody like Wonderboy, that might be very close to being top of the card.
Definitely, because the fight night card too.
Yeah, 100%. I think that December 19th card. Because Till, I think, is in the beginning of December, late November. But that would be interesting to see what Darren Till's timeline is. Obviously, he's got, he's on the hunt for that middleweight title. But then again, so is Chimaev. I think that's a good place to wrap it up there, guys. It's been phenomenal. Of course, we'll be back next week, of course, with Brian Ortega versus the Korean Zombie, of course. And it's ironic that Brian Ortega's coach is going to be called Jay Park. That broke out today because his original coach was unable to fly out because of COVID. So 2020 is bringing up more surprises than us. But make sure to give Kurta and Erin a follow on Twitter, of course. We'll be back tomorrow at 8 p.m. for the recap. And we will see you guys tomorrow at 8 p.m. on the recap.